Welcome everyone to Tell Me That. My name is Paul, and in this podcast I interview my dad to find out about his interesting, funny and enlightening life stories. So if you are interested in learning from my dad, then stay tuned.
Hi Paul.
Hello Dad.
Well, thank you very much for taking your time again to do another episode of our storytelling here.
Mm-hmm.
And last time we kind of finished up with USA Part 1,
Yes.
I would like to call it, because it was my USA experience when I was a young engineer, getting into the USA and learning about another culture, about how to get going in another country and so on. So now it's getting more into adventure and thinking about career and taking opportunities. And you see, when I was in the United States the last couple of weeks, I had to make a very important decision, I mean, these are the decisions that actually really change your life. And I was there already 3 years. And my boss, he asked me if I could be willing to, or if I would be willing to extend my contract for another 2 years or 3 years. The alternative would be to go back to Germany, to go back to the headquarters and start there in the sales department as a sales engineer, because I really didn't want to go back to the design office. And I mean, the rest of my life with a big board in front of my head, this is no way. So I did a lot of thinking, I mean, basically United States, a country that I really got very much attached to. I like the way of life. On the other hand, Germany, a bit more complicated, more rules, and back to this big company that I knew very well, but it was kind of back into that comfort zone again, 8 to 5 job. And so it was not really my thing, but in the United States, it was also getting into kind of a status quo, so then this one day, I got that phone call, and I tell you, that day changed my life. The director of the company in Germany that I had a good relationship with, actually, and he was the successor of the director that sent me to the United States. This man, the director that sent me to the United States, he passed away just about 6 months after I started my job in the United States. I mean, for me personally, it was pretty hard to swallow, because I liked that guy very much, and we had a very special relationship. And so now his successor, he called me. At the time, he was a young, ambitious engineer, very dynamic, the born salesman. But based on technical facts, I mean, selling as they did selling in Germany, I mean, in the United States, you do the small talk stuff before you get into the details. In Germany, you put like 50 drawings on the table. You explain to the customer what kind of bolts you use, what kind of guideways you have, and all that crap, and people are just listening for hours. They're getting kind of tired, and if you are lucky, after like 5-6 hours, you convince them that you have the best product in the world and they buy it. But in the United States, it's different. So anyway, so this guy, this director of the company, he also was head of the sales department. He called me, and I had basically a pretty good relationship, friendly, but on kind of a distance basis. But again, friendly with a lot of respect, He was the top seller in Europe and the rest of the world. And I did my job, a good job in the United States of America. And we were not really friends, but again, colleagues with a lot of respect and to each other. And so he called me, and I was kind of surprised because he said, well, very friendly, how are you doing, I thought it would be nice to have a word with you. And I thought, well, is that the same guy, I mean, the guy I remember from Germany? And I said, well, I'm doing great, and I have to make a decision soon, whether I stay here or whether I go back to Germany. And he said, well, yeah, that's true. I just noticed that yesterday. And I thought, well, there is something wrong.
Something's up there.
Something is up there. There is, as the Americans say, something is rotten in the state of Denmark.
Okay.
So I was listening to him, and he started telling me that in Germany business is going very well, and they are kind of expanding, and they just purchased a part of a big company in Brazil. And I thought, oops, there got to be more to that, so. And he said, well, in Brazil, close to Sao Paulo, in Sorocaba, there, two years ago, they started a kind of a joint venture with 3 other German machine tool companies. I mean, all first class, really first class, the best we had in Germany. And these 4 companies, they started some kind of an experiment which was sponsored by the German government, development department. And what they did is they had 4 assembly bays, 4 big assembly halls for their products, but 1 common manufacturing center. And that actually kind of reduced the cost quite a bit, because they, fully loaded this manufacturing center, and the assembly halls or the assembly bays, they were built size-wise so that they also would be kind of sufficient size-wise to build the products, And at that time, I must say, it was kind of difficult to import machine tools from Germany because you had to pay like 300% to 400% import tax. 300% to 400%.
That's a crazy amount.
Well, but that was how this country, Brazil, was run at the time. It was not a democracy. It was a military government, and the borders were closed. So if you wanted to sell something, the best would be to produce the product, to manufacture the product right in Brazil, Because they had resources, they had good people, they had resources, and it was definitely possible to get something going there. So therefore, these 4 companies, they made the decision that they start to manufacture their products in Brazil. Well, not the high sophisticated stuff, the high-end machines that they build in Germany, but the machines, the generation before that, So they were not that complicated, and the technology was kind of easier to handle. And so they built this big factory with altogether about 450 to 500 people, 4 assembly bays, separate halls, and this central manufacturing factory. So, and he explained all that to me, and he said, well, and for our part, we are looking for the director in the position of a vice president. And I thought, oops, I'm about 30 years old, and he offers me a position of vice president in a company like that, plus the opportunity to meet a lot of new people and to probably to meet top guys from other German machine tool companies, So, I mean, for me personally, a very interesting idea, a very charming idea, So, and he said, well, would you be interested in going to Brazil for us? And I said, well, when would that be? Well, he said, you have to start there in about 6 to 7 months. And I said, well, I would have to leave here in about a month. And not getting too deep into the formalities, but how would that be from a salary point of view? Well, he said, all the people that go to Brazil for these 4 companies, they get their regular salary in Germany, full salary in Germany, and they get another full salary each month paid out in Brazil in local currency, in cruzeiros.
Mm-hmm.
So that meant basically
2 salaries.
Well, not only 2 salaries, but a full salary in Brazil, even if it would be paid in local currency, this is so much money, you can't even spend it there.
Yeah, because of inflation as well.
Well, the inflation, and also it is really so much money.
Yeah.
At that time, today I can talk about it, it was about 6,000 Deutschmarks, which would be equivalent today to like, I would say about 10,000 euros, and 6,000 Deutschmarks in cruzeiros each month, which would be adjusted every 3 months, because an inflation of 200% per year is quite a bit. So anyway, it was so much money that would be available locally that you definitely wouldn't starve, So I didn't want to say no, but I didn't want to say yes. And I was thinking about how can you keep that cooking, and without kind of spoiling the whole deal immediately. And I said, well, Mr. S, would you mind if I would like to see the factory before I say yes? And he said, well, I don't mind at all. Why don't you go there next week? And we're going to meet there. I'm going to make a reservation, hotel, and all that. And you book a flight. You can go from Detroit to Miami, Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo. So this would be the flight you have to book. I said it would be a flight for me and my wife, of course, because she would be part of that deal as well, because I would not go to Brazil and leaving her in Germany or in the United States. No, he said, this is well understood, and you buy the tickets and make a reservation for you two guys, and we'll meet there in 2 weeks, Friday night, let's say the flight is arriving at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so let's say at 8 o'clock at the Cesar Park Hotel, Rua Augusta in Sao Paulo. I said, okay, it's a deal. So I talked to my boss in the US, and I said, well, I just got an opportunity, and the company in Germany offers me a vice president position in Brazil, in a kind of a joint venture, a very interesting setup, and for me it would be a real big step from a career point of view. And he said, well, I really appreciate you telling me, and I fully understand your position, but I'm pretty much pissed off because they are making a deal with you behind my back, and I don't like that at all. And this is also something that you can basically not do with an American, you know. I mean, with an American, you get in front of him, you look in his eyes, and you tell him, you know, and you discuss that with him, and you both find a solution. But this going behind the back, you know, and making deals, and they don't like that at all. But anyway, basically, I also felt kind of uncomfortable. But at that time, as a young engineer looking for a career, I had no other choice, you know.
What was your reason for not immediately saying yes to the offer? Was it because Brazil or?
No, it was not because Brazil. It was, I have not seen the company. Mm-hmm. Maybe the 4 factory or assembly halls that he was talking about were 4 old barracks, okay. You know, and the manufacturing facility was an old dump with just a little milling machine,
okay, I see.
and a lathe, you know. So, no, I mean, this is something I want to know, and I want to see what I get into.
Okay.
So, and also a trip to Brazil, you know, it was kind of...
I mean, not bad, right?
It was
completely paid by the company, why not?
Nice, yeah. You know. So, anyway, I talked to my boss in the States, and I very honestly talked to him. I actually asked him also for his advice, you know, and he said, well, you go there, you take a look, and if that is really the position you are thinking of, just go there, you know. So, anyway, 1 week later, we were sitting in a Pan Am Clipper, 747 Clipper. You know, at that time they were all called Clippers. You know, a Clipper on the way to Miami, and Miami we changed flights, or we changed airplanes, going down to Rio de Janeiro because there was no direct flight into Sao Paulo. You always had to go through Rio de Janeiro, and from there with a shuttle, you go to City Airport in Sao Paulo. Arriving in Sao Paulo, kind of tired, you know, because we are talking about altogether I mean, 4 plus 10, like a 16, 17 hour journey, you know. Mm-hmm. So kind of tired, we got out of the airplane, and it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were on the way to the hotel, and we arrived a little bit early, and we drove into Rua Augusta, which is kind of it's like Chicago has Michigan Avenue, and New York has Fifth Avenue, you know, and Sao Paulo has Rua Augusta. So we drove into Rua Augusta in front of the Cesar Park Hotel, and it looked all real nice, you know. I mean, Sao Paulo was a big city. Unfortunately, we didn't see a lot from Rio de Janeiro because it was just the airport, the international airport was outside Rio, And from there, we took a shuttle into the domestic airport, and from there we had this airplane shuttle service to Sao Paulo. And these airplanes that they were using at the time from Rio to Sao Paulo for that shuttle service were like 4-engine turboprops, you know.
Oh yeah, okay.
Kind of, well, they looked like leftovers from World War II, you know, and it was an adventure.
Probably an adventure for your wife as well at that time.
Well, yes, definitely. So we got into Rua Augusta, drove in front of the hotel, Caesar Park Hotel, got out of the taxi, and my, in quotation marks, my future boss from Germany, you know, he had it all so well prepared, you know. I mean, 2 guys jumping at the taxi, opened the door, and the baggage was taken, got into the hotel, and he was standing there with open arms, you know. Hey, great guys, I'm so glad to see you. And again, I thought, well, is that the same guy, you know? I mean, because I remember that guy to be a little bit more formal and you know, and
so he also came to Brazil.
Yeah, he was
meet
there.
You.
Okay.
He from Germany.
That was the agreement.
Okay.
The agreement was we were going to meet in Sao Paulo. We're going to take a look at the factory, and then I'm going to decide whether I'm going to take that position or not. So. We got into the hotel, we freshened up a little bit, and then we met at the bar, and he said, well, what would you like to drink? I mean, first the small talk, how was your flight and all that, you know, and then he said, what would you like to drink? And I thought, well, you gotta be kind of careful now, you know, because you know, with alcohol and the decision you have to make, and I mean, be careful, really. So, and he said, and I said, well, I'm going to have the same that you have. And he smiled and he said, well, I'm going to have a caipirinha. And I said, a caipi what? He said, a caipirinha. I said, please, I mean, never heard of it. What is it? He said, well, it's the national drink they have here in Brazil. It's kind of fruity, you know, with lemon, with, I mean, very tasty, and you're going to like it. And I said, well, if you have one, I have one. So we had a caipirinha, my wife had a caipirinha, and we had a second one. My wife said, no, thank you. It's, I think it's kind of infecting me already, you know.
Yeah.
And, but I didn't really feel a lot, you know. It didn't feel like having a lot of alcohol, you know. But in reality, it's loaded with
it's
alcohol
packed.
because it's packed with cachaça. Cachaça is alcohol coming from these sugar loaves, you know, and it is really, it has like cachaça has between 45 and 48%, you know, good cachaça. And anyway, so we had that second caipirinha, and then we had a third caipirinha, and then I must admit I don't really remember what happened that evening. You know? I mean, really, it was. We probably must have had another caipirinha and another.
That's incredible.
One,
I would already be dead.
Yeah, I tell you. So, the next morning, I woke up in my bed, you know, and I felt kind of bad, you know. I mean, my head was. Felt like it's going to explode any second, you know, and my wife said, "Well, congratulations." And I said, "Congratulations? What is that supposed to be?" And she said, "Well, take a look at that desk, you know." And I took a look at the desk, and there was an employment contract. You know? And I said, well, that's probably the draft that he left for me to study. And she said, no, take a look at the last page. And there was my signature and his signature. I have signed.
You had signed
that employment contract that first night, you know. But I must say, it was a very fair contract, no hooks, you know. I mean, very clearly specified my duties, their duties, even the salary and how that's going to be paid, and that I'm going to have a good health insurance and all that. So it was very, very clearly specified, a good contract. And when we met at the breakfast table, he said, well, thank you very much for your kind cooperation last night, you know, and it was a real pleasure for me to.
But he remembered that you had signed.
Well, it was just like a gray area. You know?
Okay.
So I mean, I had signed it definitely because it was my signature, and he remembered, you know, he was. Well, he probably also was drunk, but he still was under control. He was in the driver's seat that night.
Okay, yeah, I see.
So anyway, I was the new vice president, marketing and sales for this beautiful company in Brazil, and that I even haven't seen at that time, you know. So he said, well, at about 10 o'clock now we're going to be picked up. And we're going to take a look at the Engrenasa Máquinas Operatrices. That was the name of the company. So we went down there about 50 miles south of Sao Paulo. And when I saw the company first time, it was just amazing. You know, it was, I mean, every building was like 3-4 years old. Looked new. The landscaping was just, I mean, beautiful, you know, beautiful lawn. They had their own country club with the company. They had their own restaurant on the company. They had a football or soccer field on the company, 2 tennis courts. Wow. It was just, I mean, wow, you know. And that minute I knew, well, you made the right decision, you know. It would have been a shame to have that chance let go or passed, you know. And so we took a look at the facilities, we took a look at the assembly halls, and there were already machines there being built. We took a look at the manufacturing facility with, I tell you, with all brand new manufacturing machines, milling machines, turning machines. They had a measuring room with constant temperature, you know. So unbelievable. That was manufacturing at the highest level, you know.
Crazy.
So, well, the fact was that 4 companies doing a joint venture can afford that. Mm-hmm. If one company would have tried to start a business on that level, it's just impossible. Yeah. You know? So, and since it also was sponsored by the German government, it all made sense. You know, it was a great setup, and I knew I made the right decision, and so with a very good feeling, I went back to the United States. And I finished my job right there and packed all my things and went back to Germany. It felt kind of leaving home, you know. It was kind of... I can imagine. Tears in my eyes, you know. I mean, it was not that easy. But again, I mean, the world was getting smaller, and let's call that United States Part 1. Yeah. Because a couple of years later, and that was even more exciting, there was United States Part 2.
Yeah, of course.
So
Yeah, but I get the feeling like leaving home part. I mean, I lived half a year in Spain.
Yeah.
And even after 6 months, you get used to the people, you establish yourself.
Yeah.
You get used to the culture. So yeah, I get that
and
feeling.
after like 6 months, you have learned enough about the language that you get along very well, and you actually enjoy. You enjoy talking to people in their language.
Exactly.
And the acceptance that you have, I mean, is definitely different than, being in Spain and talking to the people in English language, So this is something, it's even worse in France,
Yeah, okay, well, you just don't get along with English.
Well, if you go to France and talk to the people in English, even in a restaurant, they wouldn't even look at you,
Yeah, I have experienced talking to the people in English, and they respond to you in French.
Yeah.
And they look at you, and you're like, okay, I can't understand you. It would be better in English.
Yeah, that's
and
amazing.
they understand you and still respond in French.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, I've also met French people who speak very good English, but I have to say that those were exceptions.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I went back to Germany, and the company was very cooperative, and of course they wanted to send someone to Brazil. I mean, Brazil was not United States, United States, if you have a problem, you want to get in and out or send someone to United States to support you. It was kind of easy, And even the way to communicate United States with Germany was easier than in Brazil. So what we agreed on was for 6 to 7 months, I will be in a couple of months, 2-3 months in the factory again to see how these machines that they are building in Brazil, how they are assembled and so on. Then I spent the rest of the time in the sales department in Germany to see how they set up the quotations and what kind of options they have for these machines. And I think that was very wise because I could really concentrate already on my future job in Brazil.
Yeah.
In addition, we agreed on that I get a crash course at the Berlitz School in Cologne to pick up at least the basics of the Portuguese language. 6 to 7 months, it's not that long. However, if you want to learn the language and if you have a certain talent, for languages, it's 6 to 7 months. You have experienced that in Spain, 6 to 7 months is sufficient to get enough vocabulary and you pick up phrases and so on to get going. You're not going to starve in the country. You always get something to eat. You can order a dinner and so on. So every night I drove to Cologne to have a crash course. Means just a teacher and me for 101, 2 hours every day. 5 days a week.
That's a lot. Then you can really learn something.
So after the 6 months, well, it has cost a fortune, I tell you.
Yeah, but for the company.
Yeah, for the company, of course. Yeah. Regarding the language, even after I arrived in Brazil, for about 1 more year, I took private lessons, also on a crash course basis, 1-to-1, 3 times a week. It was a private teacher, but I had to pay that myself.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter, It helped me to learn the language even better.
Yeah.
And the Portuguese that I've been taught in Cologne at the Berlitz School, it was based on Portuguese,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, I get it.
It's the same with British English and American English, you know.
Yeah.
And
Spanish as well. If you go to Spain and any South American country, it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in Brazil, this private lessons that I got, they were actually based on this local Brazilian Portuguese.
That's good.
Yeah. So after the 6 months, we got close to get going, packing our stuff, and it was not like in the United States, you know. When I moved to the United States, I had like 3 suitcases and that was it, you know. Here, since the borders were kind of closed in Brazil, you know, I mean, you couldn't even buy a good washing machine there. Or, I mean, it was just impossible, you know. So, I mean, you could buy like a Whirlpool washing machine imported from the United States at about 4 times the price that you would pay at a Sears stores in Chicago, you know.
That's crazy.
I mean, unbelievable, you know. Okay, there were still people that could afford that, but I could not afford it. So I, you know, being smart, I bought, a brand new German quality washing machine and some other stuff, stereo and all that, you know, and put it in a huge wooden crate, and the company paid for that. They said,
really?
well, you take whatever you want, put it in that crate, and just move it to Brazil. So you have a good start. You know, it's very important. And call these guys in Brazil, ask them what they recommend to buy here in Germany to bring along. You know, except the car. A car you can buy there at a pretty fair price because the cars are made in Brazil.
Okay.
You know. In Brazil, they had Ford Motor Corporation, they had General Motors, they had Volkswagen. It was pretty big there. Mercedes-Benz trucks, you know, and all that. So the automobile industry in Brazil is very, very big. So after 7 months, this big box was there. I had a second box with, I tell you, thousands of drawings, you know, that I collected. Not drawings, necessarily manufacturing drawings, but layouts, foundation layouts, and so on for different machine setups, you know, because this is what you need in sales. You know, if a customer has a question about can you do this and that with the machine, or can you put this workpiece on the machine, and so on, and you show him a drawing with a similar layout, you see, you can much easier create that base of confidence, you know, because he can see, oh, they have done that already, you know. So, second grade, all the drawings. In addition, of course, we had these 3, 4, or 5 or whatever suitcases with 90% ladies' clothes, you know, and
of course,
10% my stuff. So, and then when the day came, we got into the airplane with Varig, the national airline of Brazil. We took a flight to Rio de Janeiro, and then from there to Sao Paulo. And we arrived on a Saturday, and we stayed the first week in Sao Paulo to get kind of adapted to the climate, to the language, you know, to the people. And I still remember we arrived on a Saturday, and the following Sunday in Sao Paulo there was that hippie market, you know.
Okay.
It was kind of it was not really a flea market, you know. It was a market where they sold all the stuff that people have handmade, you know, and from clothes to nice little plates and whatever, So it was kind of a easy get into the country, and the week to follow, we visited the factory, or I visited the factory and got my office sorted out and arranged and all that, and so, but then the same process or similar process had to be started that I went through in the United States. How to get going in Brazil.
Yeah.
Enter Brazil, beautiful country, really beautiful country. So how is really going to handle that, and how is he going to get going? But this is something that I'm going to tell you about in our next episode, which I tell you will be very, very interesting and kind of funny.
Okay, good.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, so am I.
Take care.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you everyone for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something from my dad. If you're interested in how his story continued, then make sure to tune in again next week for some more lessons. Also, make sure to share this podcast with your family and friends. I would love to see you again next week. Until then, have a good time.